Help me on this one. In one of the most significant cases of the term, the Supreme Court's conservative majority seems willing to do what? To allow the nation's first religious public charter school, permitting direct and complete taxpayer funding for a faith-based school for the first time. This is a school in rural Oklahoma that expects students to adhere to Catholic beliefs and religious mission and doctrine. But this ruling in favor of the school by the high court could trigger an explosion, as noted here, of religious schools funded entirely by U.S. tax dollars. It could also lead to some states putting new limits on charter schools to avoid funding religion. Speak to the Supreme Court's disposition to federal dollars going to religious education.
Well, I feel better about paying taxes right now, Mark, don't you, with the prospect of them going to religious schools on our dime? You know, the background to this is that these religions, no one's being hostile to religion. Religions have huge exemptions. You go all around this country, you find these beautiful pieces of property that would sell for billions of dollars, and there's a church there, or there's a synagogue there, or there is a mosque there, and they don't pay any tax whatsoever. And they're exempt from all kinds of regulations. And in exchange for that, though, they can't use federal money. You know, they're not paying in any federal money, and they want to take out all this federal money. And this case is a very tough one. One thing is that Amy Coney Barrett has recused herself. So there's a real possibility of a 4-4 split. The three moderate to liberal justices are all going to vote to affirm the Oklahoma court. So if Roberts goes with them, it goes 4-4, and Oklahoma's Supreme Court is affirmed, which means that this cannot be done. And wow, this is a really tough one to predict. It's either, I think Roberts is if Kavanaugh's questions made it clear that, you know, he wants to protect the Catholic schools. And this is so terrible for our country and for the perception of the courts, Mark. We want to have a lot of respect for the courts. We want the courts to be held in high esteem. If this is affirmed, it's going to be all Catholic justices. Okay, this is the the dominance of the court by the Catholics, and if the Catholics deliver this, yes, it's going to help yeshivas, it's going to help madrasas get money from the taxpayers. But if this is done by all Catholic justices, and it's perceived very much as helping the Catholic Church, the issue is that these charter schools, Mark, are public schools. There's no messing around with that. All the law has said that they're public schools, and a lot of people don't understand that about charter schools. They give choice, but within a parameter approved by the state, organized by the state, with a curriculum that's largely dictated by the state. They are very much not private schools, and that's why they're funded with tax dollars, because the same authorities that collect the taxes, the government controls those schools. So now the question is, can you give that money, which is given to a charter school, to a religious school? And the answer has always been no, because that's the separation between church and state. These religions don't pay in and they don't get out. Now, there are certain things. Can you construct a driveway? Everybody needs a driveway. So maybe you can do a driveway with public funds at a religious school. And so there's all this law on how much the government can fund. But the idea they can fund the entire school because it's a charter school has always been beyond the pale. And, this is not a liberal state. There was only one dissenting vote, and the Oklahoma Supreme Court said that, no, you cannot spend this kind of money. Sotomayor asked a really good question. She pointed out it's not just Catholic schools. You take some of these yeshivas, which are Jewish schools. I'm Jewish myself. But some of them are pretty extreme in their curriculum. That's fine as long as they're religious schools and they're not funded by the government. Many of those schools, almost all they do is read the Talmud, and they don't even read it in English. There are people who graduate from those schools who don't even speak English. We're going to pay for that with our taxpayer funds. They could never be a normal charter school if they have a 90% religious orientation. Or you take the Catholic school, the St. Isidore of Seville Catholic school, the one that's actually suing right here. It's a Catholic catechism, which is all very, very fine. But the idea that we're going to pay public funds and a large part of the program is this Catholic catechism is just not right. It's not right under our Constitution and our separation of church and state. Now, Kavanaugh and some of the other Catholic justices who are aligned with him, who want to uphold this, they say, well, wait a second. The only thing wrong with that St. Isidore of Seville school is that it's Catholic. It has religion. But that's everything that's wrong with it. That's everything that's wrong with it. It's not because we're hostile to religion. It's because there's separation of church and state. So this is the biggest religion case of the term. And I think it's a fascinating
it's
one.
huge. I mean, it kicks the door open to, as you've just stated, I mean, the kind of
there
funding.
Are over 4 million. Let me say one last thing. There are over 4 million kids in charter schools. And a lot of the states may react and just get rid of charter schools. That's what a lot of people may do. They say, whoa, wait a second. The charter school, maybe it emphasized science and math more than the regular schools. Maybe it had slightly different disciplinary rules that made some parents happy to go to this charter school. But the idea that you're going to be funding madrasas and yeshivas and Catholic schools because the Supreme Court of the United States says you have to, if you're going to spend public money on charter schools, so many people will say, well, that's it, no more charter schools. And that affects millions of people and their parents. And we should leave things just exactly where they are and not mess around with 4 million students in charter schools.
And you point out so beautifully the irony of tax exemption and now wanting tax dollars for support. The idea, and I've just been against it since, I was old enough to speak. It just seems so absurd that you just mention God and divinity and you get tax exemption. And you can build huge real estate empires, as the Church of Scientology has done, and as the Catholic Church has done, et cetera, while paying no taxes on any of this stuff. So just more to this, just as we finish up, Alito asking if charter schools could set up LGBTQ plus friendly curriculum. Justice Alito asking Oklahoma attorney Gregory Garay if charter schools could be more flexible in their curriculum and give families more alternatives to choose from in public education. Garay said that all public schools, including charters, have to conform to the state's curriculum requirements. That's what David Katz has just said. Alito invoked several hypotheticals of what he called, quote, progressive schools setting their own curriculum, including being an LGBTQ plus friendly school. Those are his words, with books that present same-sex couples as, quote, a perfectly legitimate lifestyle, or teaching history from the standpoint of the 1619 Project, which sought to reframe how the United States talks about slavery. The lawyer for this Oklahoma school that's trying to get this funding said no, because those schools would still need to meet the state's academic standards and could not focus their curriculum on those subjects. So, as you've just said, David, this school, this St. Isidore, would also have to meet those standards, the standards established by the state.
Well, LGBTQ is not a religion. And there are all of these privileges that religions have. But, we have two clauses. One is that we don't establish a religion, but one is that we keep religion and state separate. And this is, our founding fathers and mothers, right? The people who came over, this is what they came over here for, was religious liberty and to not have the state tell you what to do. That's one thing. That's all very nice. And I guess Alito's saying, well, they kind of tell our kids what to do because they have this LGBTQ friendly agenda, but that's not a religion. And the Catholic dogma, Catholic catechism, is a religion. That's why they get all these tax breaks and everything else, but that's also why they don't get funded by the taxpayers. To me, Alito is not, he's ignoring, and if the right-wing Catholic justices on there, as I say, all it takes really is Roberts. If Roberts goes, I think Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, from their questioning, Alito, Thomas, it's clear that those 4 Catholic justices are going to affirm. So if they get Roberts, who's also Catholic, to go with them, and they decide this thing 5-3, it's just a terrible day for the separation of church and state. And I remember when JFK was running for president. I'm old enough to remember that. And everybody said, oh, he won't be a president for the American people. He'll do what the Pope wants. And boy, this is sure going to have the look of doing what the Pope wants, because they're going to subsidize all these Catholic schools that our entire lifetime, Mark, have not been paid for by the taxpayers. This is radical. This is almost like Dobbs. This is changing law that's existed, your whole life. I'm older than you, so most of my life. But we have not paid for Catholic schools. We haven't paid. I have a friend, he's all upset about that. My God, I pay all these taxes for the public schools and my kid doesn't even go there. I got to pay for the yeshiva. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That's the way it's
right.
been here
No,
for
of
a long
course.
time. That's the way it is.
Those arguments have never held well. I got to pay all this money. It goes to the library. I never use the library. Yeah, that's not the point.
Well,
It's
now,
not,
but now we taxpayers are going to pay, and the rubber's going to hit the road for some people when they're starting to pay for these madrasas. And you just shouldn't pay for anybody's religious education. And they have a right to their religious education. They don't have to go to the public schools. You can send your kid to those Jewish people who send their kids to those schools where they study the Talmud and they barely learn English at school. We're not taking away their right because we're not establishing a religion. We're not infringing on their religious liberty. And likewise with the Catholics, no matter how much, you may be a Bill Maher type, atheist, right? And yet, you don't have to pay for the Catholic schools. At the same time, loads of people can send their kids to Catholic school and they can have a dogma that's anathema to you. And that's always been the way that this country has gone down. And they may change that. I'm just hoping that Roberts takes a deep breath on this one and makes it 4-4. And then they can, I think the reason that Amy Coney Barrett is not in it is I think that she may have had something to do with the group that's litigating this case. So she did the right thing.
I see.
She did the right thing by standing down out of it. And I suppose some Supreme Court can look at it again in the future, but I sure hope they don't, because I think that the thing is set up now, Mark, just in a way that serves everybody's interests, and that all the taxpayers, I think, are really going to rebel against the charter schools if having a charter school means that you have to pay for religious schools, and you don't want to pay for that.
Right. And I think you're right to bring in all these other religions, because everybody goes, my religion, my Lord and Savior is the right one. The rest of these, you don't deserve any money.
Those are all the countries the immigrants left. That was exactly how they did it. That was the
Sure.
Church of England. What do you think drove people here for their religious liberty? To not have the Church of England do exactly what this Catholic majority of the U.S. Supreme Court might do now.
But what's masquerading as religious liberty is actually a kind of imposition of religion. And you, as you say, don't have a state religion, but the minute you have supporting monies coming from state coffers, I mean state federal, when I say state, the state of the United States of America, all of a sudden you are supporting certain religions over others. But you get into what is a de facto support of a religion. And the last thing I just want to mention is that this president, and many would call him godless and knowing nothing about religion.
There is that, Mark.
I might call him that. But and by the way, being godless, by the way, is fine. I've got no problem with people who are godless at all. I embrace them. It's terrific. But the hypocrisy of being godless and also doing this, the executive order establishing a presidential commission on religious liberty and openly questioning the separation of church and state. I mean, he is escalating this controversy that you've talked about and getting us closer to state-sponsored religion. And he said this: they say there's separation. I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure. But whether there's separation or not, you guys are in the White House where you should be, and you're representing our country, and we're bringing religion back to our country, and it's a big deal. Those are Trump's remarks.
You can send your kid to Hebrew school after classes. You can send them to Catholic school. You can observe your religion in so many ways. The Supreme Court has carved out all those things that you don't have to abide by if it's against your religious scruples. A lot of people think they've gone way too far on some of those things. Medical centers that don't have to treat people because supposedly it's against their religious scruples. And you think, really? I mean, you couldn't find doctors to do that procedure. It was but they've allowed them all kinds of exemptions from all kinds of laws this U.S. Supreme Court has. They've bent over backwards, I think, too far in their precedents. But if they actually do this, I don't know. It's a really, really hard one to predict. And like I said, it's really going to come down to Roberts. If he votes with the other with the three, it's pretty clear how the other three are going to vote. That is, Sotomayor, Kagan, and what's the one that they just put on there, Mark?
You're talking about Barrett or the last?
Yeah,
the last justice appointed was Barrett, right?
No, the one that Biden.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jackson?
There you go.
Yeah.
The three of them, it's clear how the three of them are going to vote. And so since 4-4, and the Oklahoma Supreme Court, get a load of this, They got this right with only one dissenting vote, because it's very clear, Mark, under the precedents, that that's how this case ought to come out. And it may be that Roberts, he'll get a lot of flack from the right wing and the religious lobbies and all that. But the Catholic Church, I don't think he'll be invited to Rome the way Alito was. But I think that Roberts may say, you know what, this really is changing. This is like another Dobbs. This is another one that's really against precedent in this field. And the taxpayers, they don't get anything from these religions. They shouldn't have to pay for schools. And charters are public schools. They're under public force in a way that these schools will not be, because they'll still be teaching their catechisms and their dogmas and all this kind of stuff. And so charter schools are one thing if they're not religious. And it's not because we don't like religion or we're hostile to religion. It's because there's another principle that kicks in, the separation of church and state, that precludes the taxpayers from having to pay for religious schools, even if they're so-called charter schools. Charter schools means public and not religious, the way the Catholic Church and the yeshivas are.
I am told by Kim. Kim, did you have something you wanted to inform us of?
Hiya, Kim.
Kim, welcome. You can jump on. Does Kim not?
Hi,
there
I'm
you go.
here. All I said was it's 1:20 now, 1:22. I was just noting the time, like
I
a
see.
human alarm clock.
Yeah,
Hi, David
okay.
Katz.
All right.
I blame
Kim.
you.
Good to
All
see
right.
You. You have an opinion on this?
Kim, how are you?
Kim is saying we don't have time for any more
Oh,
opinions.
okay.
She's
I think it
saying,
sounds
look,
like
your opinion?
we're on the
completely agree with
Pacific
you.
time. She's
Everything
looking
you
at
said, David Katz.
Pacific time. It's 1:20, which is
Starting to
well
sound like
past
a
our
Trump cabinet
expiration
meeting.
date.
Kim,
Yeah.
this is starting to sound like a Trump cabinet meeting.
That's right. That's right.
You agree with everything I said or thought in my life. Bless
I
you.
mean, who goes against Katzadamus? Come on.
It is true.
Take
David
care.
Katz,
Thank
we
you.
adore you. Thank you, Kim, for reminding us that we do have to keep a schedule of some kind. We'll look for you on apparently News Nation, Fox News Channel, and across the English-speaking world, and of course next Thursday. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Great to be with you. Good to be back with you. You doing okay? How's your hand?
It's recovering. I still have some movement issues, but it's recovering. So thank you for asking. I appreciate
Great.
that. Neither Kim nor Albert asked about my hand or my condition. They don't. They were all business. Yeah.
That's the trial lawyer in me, Mark. That's the trial lawyer in me. I'm such a scary person.
All right, David. Be well, my friend. David Katz, everybody. Yes, I'm
Hi, it's
loving
Mark,
it.
and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.